consultants are charging millions of pounds day rate for, to get.
And the answer might be
answer is
with
there.
the T-boy.
Don't overlook the T-boy.
Hello everybody, welcome back. It's another unedited conversation with me, Ed Gould. Now, what if I told you that you're all failing? I've been told it enough times, but it's true, or at least 70% of you are, and that failure is universally, wherever it is around the world, to do with, digital transformation. And that's what this pod is all about. So we've brought in one of our friends from the Carswell Collective, an expert in digital transformation, Alex Hayes. And Alex is going to give us a whistle-stop tour of the good, the bad, and the ugly of digital transformation. It's a word that drives me insane. It's a barrier for marketing success, business growth, but it's also the enabler that lets all of our businesses succeed long-term and grow and flex and be agile. So how do we create the right environment for ongoing technical change within a business? What types of things and behaviors and teams do we need to have to make sure that we can succeed? And how do we stop the endless amount of wasted money and failure that is plowed into software and technical transformation in all types of businesses all over the world? That's what today's about. So doesn't matter what you do. If you're a marketing person, it will have impacted you. If you're an FD, it will have impacted you. If you're a sales guy, it will have impacted you. So listen on to find out how someone like Alex, who works in all sorts of organizations, helping them succeed, does it. And listen till the end to hear her top tip. So if you're ready to roll, let's sit back, relax, and here comes another unedited conversation.
Welcome to another unedited conversation, and today joining me I've got Alex, and this is a different conversation to some of the last ones we had. We're going to dig into some topics that might on the surface not feel that marketing related, but trust me, after years of doing this, the subject that we're going to talk about, which is digital transformation, impacts every area of the business. So Alex, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
As is tradition, why don't you kick off by just telling us a bit about who you are, what you do, and what's brought you to this point today?
Okay, so I started working in advertising actually about 25 years ago, and quickly moved over to sort of agency life, and then the digital revolution came in, and I started working there in the early days, working in digital marketing. And have done really for the sort of last 15 years. And throughout that time, it's been quite clear that whenever you try and do anything within digital marketing, it has an impact around the business. It needs to integrate with another application or whatever. So you kind of start becoming a bit more ingrained in organisations and actually how the digital functions work. And so I thought, you know what, actually, it's about digital transformation. Everything is digital these days. And I thought, why not? It's about culture, it's about people, and it's interesting. And so I kind of made a sideways step into the kind of consulting side.
And you're specialising in working with businesses on specific change projects, or what sort of stuff do you get involved with?
Yeah, it's generally talking to the sort of top down. It's C-suite. It can be coming in to work on a small program to start with, and then obviously unpicking and unravelling how their transformation's working. Digital is the enabler ultimately. It's really, again, it goes back to that marketing piece. It's really about working with the top, understanding what the kind of vision, values, purposes of the business, what they're trying to achieve, where their competitors are at and what they're trying to do to be better. And working down from there.
So, I mean, to contextualise this for our listeners, our wonderful listeners who are out there, every single one of them, no matter if it's an SME through to a global organisation, I am sure will have had moments where something's not working the way it should, the team aren't connecting the way they should, the results or the visibility of analytics isn't what it should. And obviously there's the siloed sort of data from a marketing function, but increasingly what I'm experiencing when I'm working is projects actually being impacted, people being impacted, because the right decisions aren't being made at the right time. And digital transformation, for a lot of us, I think, is a bit of a buzzword that's been used so many times that it starts feeling a little like bullshit.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, exactly that. I mean, to be
Excuse
honest,
me.
no,
I'm not taking
no,
your job down,
no.
but there's challenges in just the perception of it, I think.
Absolutely. I think there absolutely is. I mean, the perception is, well, it's not a perception. You use the word digital transformation, therefore you know, you think it's to do with digital, whereas actually the irony isn't. It's not really digital at all. It's actually about the people and the culture and understanding skill sets and you know, a culture of innovation and, you know, allowing people to thrive, you know, in their capabilities and skills and try and, you know, upskill them in various areas because, you know, from the dawn of time, everyone's thought, you know, AI is going to take over the world and robots are going to kill them. You know, at the end of the day, you think, you know, in a large global business where someone comes in and says, hey, guys, you know, we've got a new AI tool to a workforce of 40 people that have been there for 30 years, you know, you can imagine the fear and the resistance that's going to give. And so it's really about understanding, you know, like the organizational structure and how it works and the people within it and making sure that those people are actually able to deliver the digital further down the line. So it's not about replacing them. It's about, you know, it's about empathizing with them and they are an asset, really.
Let's start with we're talking broadly, and we're going to get in all sorts of detail about this as we go forward. But why don't we start with a definition, something that we can all sort of collect around? So, how would you define now, you know, modern digital transformation nowadays?
Well, nowadays, well, I suppose the definition to start with is you've got business transformation, which has been going on for, you know, decades. And that's the change management kind of culture side of things. And then you've had digital transformation. Business transformation there's been a beginning and an end to it, you know, so there's been a shorter kind of journey. Whereas digital transformation is really, it's the long game. You know, it doesn't stop because as we've seen with, you know, companies have been struggling to catch up with, you know, getting on the cloud, using data and analytics. You know, these things haven't just come out of nowhere. They've been around for years, yet people still aren't adopting them and using them in everyday business practice. And now AI's come along. So we've got to imagine that something else is going to come along. I don't know what that is because I'm not a technologist, but something else will come along. So digital transformation is basically...
It's agile.
Yeah, it's agile and it's here forever. You know, it's not going to go anywhere. So it's not going to stop. So again, it's about creating that company or organisation that can handle that and handle what's going to come down the line in the future.
That's interesting. So in a distant land many years ago, I used to work for a Swedish, I think, change management company.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting hearing you define digital transformation in that way because it's leaning towards the culture, the structure, the responsibility of the company to be set up in a way that allows moves to be made in an agile way.
Yeah.
I think maybe 15, 20 years ago, it was much more binary in the sense it was saying, okay, we're gonna take a piece of major management software. I don't know, like in my world, it would be a Salesforce or maybe it's an EPOS system. And someone would come in and go, we'll do a piece of digital transformation. And really, a lot of the time, it was less complicated than it was being made out to be.
Yeah.
Yet there was still failures in that. So it's interesting to hear you define it as, I guess, to summarize, the capability of a company to move with the times from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about there, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't there at the time, but it sounds like you're absolutely right. There was a dawn of, you know, things came along which had a use case, you know, okay, payments are going out left, right and centre. I know what we'll do. We'll make them digital. Great. Okay, that is very clear. You know,
what can we digitize? Just digitize
yeah,
it. Digitize everything and work it out later.
But now, literally, everything can be digitized. It's limitless. The use cases for digital technology, AI are limitless. So you sort of have to go back the other way and go, actually, okay, so let's break it down. What do we need from it? What do we need it to do? What are our priorities? How can we approach this? What's going to benefit the company the best? And not forgetting all along that it's the humans that make that decision.
I know you've got a bunch of stats and you've got some facts and figures, but let's think about the challenges a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's been, and actually one of the reasons that I did sort of do my little sideways move into digital transformation was because I've been working with organisations that have been doing it sort of in the sidelines. I've been working within teams and programmes, and even I think my first one was 2016. And I remember then I worked with Forrester. We were working on a programme for a pharmaceutical company. And even then, the stat that was coming out of McKinsey, Baines, Forrester, all the big boys, was that 70% of digital transformation projects fail. When I looked that up again recently, that hasn't changed, and you just...
I think it was about that 20 years ago
exactly.
as well.
So you think, well, hang on a minute, how is that not changed? So anyway, so then you kind of have a little deeper dig into things. And actually, you realise, well, it hasn't changed because we're still approaching it in the same way, which seems mental, actually. We're still getting bamboozled by technology companies approaching, individual organisations and saying, hey, we've got this for you and it's amazing, without actually understanding how it's going to benefit the organisation, that they're approaching. So they get into this, poor planning, knee-jerk, not really understanding, thinking
the loudest person in the room shouting, I've got to have this software. And no one having the guts to say,
or sometimes the biggest ego. The biggest ego is, an absolute shocker. And, again, there's lots of areas, lots of use cases I could say about egos. But, people, we talk about legacy systems, and they are, again, another massive failure, not understanding the system that is being replaced in the first place, because the company that's approaching to, say, all right, they go to a technologist, we want to do some digital transformation, it's the normal kind of opener. And the techie guys will go, okay, yeah, fine, well, let's do a discovery phase. And they go, well, how much that cost? And they go, well, no, we haven't got money for that. Can you just give us a fee and off you go. And and absolutely, it's the worst way of approaching it, but still they do it. That lack of partnership and trust right at the beginning is quite often where, they fail in that situation, I think. And it still goes on, and it's, it's it's really obvious. And then you've got, so it's the poor planning, not understanding really, what's kind of underneath, picking underneath what's underneath the carpet.
That 70% number, let's dig into that a little bit. So the volume of projects will have increased over the period as well. So it's not only staying at the same number, it's even worse because, arguably there's more to fail in that. Do you think the industry or business as a whole is broadly happy with that number? Do you think there's an element that, because there's people paid far more than me and you who are very, very important FDs of big institutions, they know that these rates are here, and the number of millions of pounds, dollars, euros that are being wasted is bizarre.
But I think that's why, and I think that's why we've sort of got this paralysis, if you like, and this is why...
We're failing so much, just keep failing?
No, I think
otherwise
we're failing so much, so let's just stop trying, I think, is actually is where we seem to be at the moment.
And who's stopping? The board, the CEOs, the C-suite?
Yeah, people whose heads are going to be on the block if it doesn't perform. And ultimately, they don't know how to approach it so it does perform. The people on the C-suite, obviously they have their skills, which is the knowledge of the business. You know, I think really it's clear that people have to come in from the outside.
You need to bring that outside
You
view
need
in.
to bring that outside
The skills
view
are
in.
not within the business.
No,
because the
it's not.
business isn't
No.
focused on that
Because
sort of thing.
Because this goes back to the loudest person in the room, or, you know, battling with the egos, you know, which there is, you know, within any organisation. And you need that outside person to come in and give that completely independent, non-biased view and say, well, actually, no, these are the priorities that we need to work on. And there may be 500 of them, but we don't need to work on 500 at a time. This one, actually, this one here, this is where we want to be. This is where our focus is going to be. This is what we're going to do first. You know, I'm sorry, everyone else, but right now, this is what the business needs. And you need that independent view, I think. And that, unfortunately, you know, previously...
Is that borne out? I mean, you had some other stats that we were talking about earlier. Is it borne out in the evidence of, if we look at some of those?
I'm just going to look at them because I don't want to get them wrong.
Yes,
So,
good.
you know.
Very, very well briefed way to say that. Yes, excellent.
Thank you.
Chuck
hang
a
on.
few more headlines. at
Right,
us.
okay, a few headlines. 20 billion spent on IT transformation in 2021 in the public sector.
Okay, and the public sector in the UK are on their arse. They haven't got enough money.
Exactly,
They're pissing away 20 billion a year.
Exactly.
Somebody who's listening to this, please talk to your local leader.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you've got the Police National Computer Project, which overran by 400 million.
Famously so.
This year we've had the Birmingham City Council, which have had huge issues, and they
went bust, didn't they?
They went bust, and that's, you know, and when we think about that, that's the fourth largest council in Europe has gone bust. You know, not just in the UK, in Europe. So, you know, and that was Oracle and all of the, you know, main systems integrators were all involved in that.
I guess you can chuck the post office scandal into digital transformation.
That's been going for years.
Do you think? Do you think? We're very UK centric on these
I have,
stats.
yeah, I've made them. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Ultimately, this is borne out across the world. You know,
Oh,
this
God,
is even worse in the
it's
US.
Actually in the,
it's worse in the US.
Absolutely. I mean, they're talking trillions of dollars, which is why I didn't come in, you know, here with that kind of
stuff. Is there any
stat,
evidence to suggest there's more wastage and failure in, say, local authority or public versus private companies? Are us commercial giants better at it because we've got the finger on the pulse and we've got more, or have you got any evidence to suggest that? Because certainly they publicise, obviously they publicise overspends in public sector, and so they should.
Yeah,
but
quite right.
Is it fair? You know, when you think of HSBC or Barclays, legacy systems, trying to move those out, would they be
No, they're not.
messing up just as much?
I don't think they are. You know, unfortunately for the public sector, I don't think they are. And it's about their heavyweights. You know, they're heavyweights. They've had digital infrastructure, you know, in their backbone. You know, from the dawn of time, they've been on it. You know, and they've had the advice from, you know, again, the Foresters and the McKinleys. They've got better structures. Exactly.
So
you
where
know,
do
they're
you
less
think...
entrepreneurial. I think when you get an entrepreneurial organisation, which, you know, is kind of grown a little bit, I don't know what the word is, but it shouldn't be entrepreneurial anymore. It should now be at board level. There should be, you know, decisions should be made, you know, more pragmatically. Exactly, yeah. And I think, you know, sometimes that has been lost.
But when you compare that story of the Birmingham local authority, they are as big as a major business.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, they have the responsibility to...
And that story, which, you know, actually I've read quite a lot about, and the ins and the outs and the whys and wherefores of why it failed and why, you know, and actually my view on it is there were just too many people involved in the first place. You know, the guys at Birmingham City Council weren't talking directly to the people installing that system. You know, there was
7 degrees
of separation. Exactly. You know, and every time that, you know, they had another change going through, there was 7 costs being added to that, you know, and there lies the problem, you know.
I think this is the nub of many issues in life, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think, so
Too
going
many
back
cooks.
Exactly, and going back to why, you know, there's that kind of paralysis now, I think it's because of that. I think, business leaders today think, I'm going to start a project with someone and then actually I'm not going to know what's going on. We're going into that black box of development and, I give them my money and nothing comes out the other end. And, I've been there before and frankly, I didn't like it very much. It made me very, nervous. And I think, what they don't know is that there are, organisations and small consultancies, like me and good technologists out there who are much more transparent now, and they do want to eyeball you, and they do want the information, and they do want to give you the right advice. I just think they've had their fingers burnt, and they think that the whole kind of digital transformation technologist kind of world is a scary place, and and they don't want to go there, which is a shame because they need to go there because 45% of CEOs in the UK admit that their technology and their digital infrastructure isn't fit for purpose, and actually they're not going to be in business for 10 years. I mean, how sad is that? Because they are feeling already that they're that far behind that they're not going to be able to catch up to, to make a successful
let's
business.
just pick that apart. So that stat is a piece of research that looked at CEOs in the UK, and 44% of them stated that they didn't feel that from a technical point of view, their business was fit for the future.
Yeah, that's a
So it doesn't talk about what they're going to do about it. It's a broad catch-all that says, and I think if you asked marketing directors, do you think your marketing function no. And do you? So let's stop for a second. We've got these challenges, but let's stop for a second and think. One thing that's not going to change is that things move forward.
No, that's it.
So let's go on to one of the drivers for, and we're going to keep calling it digital transformation. It almost feels like we need a new name for this, but that's very marketing buzzwordy, isn't it? But it's
to be honest, even I don't know whether to call it digital transformation or just business transformation.
Okay, so listeners,
or
dear
just,
listeners, listen to this. If you have any ideas
please
what
write
Alex
in.
should say what she does is, and how we cut through to these people so they understand, do write in. Details in the show notes. With my agency hat on, and often in these podcasts, I have to sort of swap hats and think about what's my experience of this. And over the last sort of 30 years that we've been doing this, countless times things haven't happened or haven't gone ahead or have been impacted due to inferior solutions being put in place that are either dragging the marketing teams or the brand teams or the CEO and the leadership in every direction. So you just, even down, and I'm sure some of the listeners will appreciate this, you're looking for the answer. You can't get the answer because the person's nowhere near it because they've been pulled into another project. And in fact, we have a wonderful guest that's going to be joining us soon on the pod, but they can't. And the reason they can't, they've been pulled into a digital, quote unquote, digital transformation project.
That's not my fault. I don't even know who you're talking about.
No, it's your doing. But the drivers for this are huge because, you mentioned AI earlier, but new trends and that just, and I'm only looking at it through my lens. I mean, if I was running like a major manufacturing and which needed logistics, they need the manufacturing data, they need costing, they need different supply chain tools coming in, and you've got businesses that are now so reliant on so many different organizations or data points coming into that. That's driving investment. So I get why so much is being invested. What's your view on sort of how AI or new trends or new pieces of, does that create issues? Does it mean that people are looking at it in the wrong way? Or does it mean it's great for you because you need to do that work? How do you see that?
No, again, well, it's about perception, isn't it, really? And helping, business leaders understand really how AI can impact their business, but also what they need to do for that to happen. I went to a conference this week and people from Microsoft and all sorts were standing out and saying important things in the digital world. And even they're saying, customers come to them and say, I'll have 5 of those AIs, please. Can you get them done by me, for me this month?
And you're
so
talking
it's a
about
real,
stuff that doesn't really exist
it
yet
doesn't
in
exist.
some instances.
It doesn't exist. And AI is just an enabler. It's just, again, it's like a computer, but it's an enabler which requires, a massive load of storage, fast processing. There's so much that goes into that to get that working, not to mention data sets in the first
And
place.
I can imagine it starts with someone going, oh, we need to bake AI into what we're doing.
Yeah.
Someone up high says it.
Yeah.
I said it here. I said it. And Louis, who's the producer, was probably in the room and is going, yeah, you did. And we've done nothing on that.
Well, yeah. And everyone goes, I'll just use ChatGPT then,
And I was going to say, the result is everyone now uses ChatGPT.
Exactly.
But what we were trying to do, and we're an SME, and we were trying to say, okay, our industry is significantly changing, and I will be a bit glib about it, but there is a serious point here. It's being impacted heavily. How do I, as a business leader, when we meet in the board, react to those sorts of things?
Yeah.
What are the key trends that are impacting our business? Trend 1, 2, 3, and a board will go, right, then we need to tackle 1, 2, 3. Get a bit of 1, sort out 2. So there isn't really any activity from the board to work out how. That will get passed down through the executive. CEO, managing director will call a meeting to the leaders and they'll go, right, where are we? What are we doing on AI? And then someone in marketing will go, well, I'll probably bake ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And it's so far away from the original aim, which is, in our industry, there are pieces of technology that will totally change the way in which people engage with content.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is our position on that and how? And so we actually did do more work on that. We talked about policies and we thought about different tool sets and we made our own tool sets and we're still exploring that. But what we noticed, which bears out what you said, is there isn't a beginning and end.
No.
And everyone was like, have we finished that? I was like, are you kidding?
But
like,
also,
give it 3 more years, something else is going to come and take your job as well. So,
but also, it's probably a point where you thought, actually, how can it benefit our customers? Okay, let's really get on board with, hyper personalization. Then, for example, that's one, marketing, tool.
And we're talking about an easy, very small
Yeah.
piece. I mean, imagine you are on a whole nother scale, and I work with I can't really say that.
No, but just going back to that,
a global company, it's much harder to implement. I mean, I've got 20 people plus 20 externals that I need to bring on board with that.
Yeah.
Imagine if you've got 20,000 people.
But what I was going to say is, but it's not just that. You think, your organisation goes, right, let's do that. Let's kind of have a push. Let's understand it. Let's do something about it. Let's show our, value to the customers, that we can bring. Yeah. You then go to the customers and you go, right, we're going to do some, hyper personalisation. We're going to increase your, click-through rate by 35%. And then actually you go, right, where's the data? And they go, oh, we haven't really got any, and you're back to square one again. Organisations aren't as ready for
certain things
as much as we think they are or want them to be.
So you can't pull that in simply because the ecosystem, the tech stack.
So all you can do really is think about it and talk about it as thought leaders and hope that, by doing that, you are generating obviously some, perception out there that one day when people have got their data ready, or work with them to get their data ready and work on it as a program together, perhaps. But, we are really sort of, our thinking is actually quite ahead of the reality of how businesses are performing today.
It's the Back to the Future complex.
It is really
we
that.
We think we're on hoverboards.
We are. Exactly.
I think I'm on a hoverboard most days. But in our world, in my world, I have to think like that.
Yeah.
So then you have to pull yourself back to the practicalities. As a creative person, I have to think like I'm on a... But certainly in these larger organisations, there's more infrastructure in place. And I think what we should move to next is we should think about what should we be doing as leaders? Let's start thinking about some practical tips. So let's talk about what organisations, small or large, should be doing to increase their chances of success to actually be ready for this digital transformation at any point, or to get through these projects? What do you think those ideas are that leaders should be thinking about, which organizations should be thinking about?
Well, I think you've really got to strip back, get ready to strip back and be honest. You've got to get in there with the guys at the top, the guys and girls at the top, and sit down and have an honest conversation. Egos have got to be left at the door. You've got to bring someone in to perhaps, validate the conversations and just help to kind of bring them along.
When does that start? Because someone says something and then the idea begins that something needs to change, or someone sees something. Let's say we're a bank with a big legacy system.
Yeah.
And the other banks just changed their system, and we know because everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, right, we need to make a move. At what point should those people bring in an outside view? How are they validating that this is a business case, and how far the scope of that change should be? What steps do they need to take to actually scope that piece of work out properly, do you think?
Well, I think the first mistake is that they're going by what the competitors have done rather than actually looking at the value that they're delivering to their customers.
Okay.
Yeah. As we know, the constant sort of ambition of delivering value to your customers, you've got to be looking at that now. And if you're not looking at it, then there, lies the problem to start with. So, so taking that and looking at what they want, and if you are able to deliver that, is the first thing. And if you can't deliver it, then how can you deliver it? And then thinking about, okay, well, this is how we can deliver it. Take that off as a small kind of, MVP or, a POC project, and actually get members of the team from all areas of the business that would affect to be on that team, and just create
and to build
a unit.
out that.
Just create a little unit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A small cell, if you like, of people to build out that particular, value.
And to look at the idea, the value it brings,
And
how it might be achieved,
absolutely.
different scenarios
Before
someone sells you a solution.
Absolutely. I would advise getting a technologist on board then, talk to the developers, get the technical guys in.
So people with an open view of what's out there.
What's out there, what can be done, how it can be done. I mean, there's low code, no code, for example, now, which is being used and deployed, at rapid pace. So apps and small kind of like, products can be developed really quickly with guys who know what they're doing. And that can reduce costs, reduce time, and
so
you
for
can start...
prototyping, or for solution delivery?
For solution delivering, yeah.
And when they map out, so as a leader, I'm thinking, I'm not necessarily thinking about the specific tips, but more like the culture part that you were talking about. So as a leader, I've brought my team together around an issue. We're taking our time to work through that, to define that there's a proper business case, and to maybe put some scenarios together that can be considered by the leadership. What other things should the leadership of that organization be doing to give it the best chance of not being another failure?
It's long-term planning again, really, and it's long-term planning, I think, with the skills and the talent that you've got in-house. Failures of legacy systems can often be around the fact that they've been running licenses with a particular company, and then within that time, they haven't kind of explained to anyone else in the company how it works.
Yeah, I've seen that so many times.
And then the system goes down, and no one knows what's going on, and no one
at the moment
where
we took on a project, and then actually the person that knows how to press a button's gone.
So exactly.
And you're going, but you're a multi-billion pound company.
Yeah, exactly.
And so a lot of work. So that sustainability bit.
Sustainability with, and I'm aware of digital companies actually that are now creating their own skills and talent pools using apprenticeships, for example, which
And
is an excellent
building,
idea.
so
and
you've got that
building it.
longevity.
Exactly,
I mean,
building it for the long term.
I
Yeah.
guess from a leadership and a C-suite point of view, and we talked about local government earlier, and without getting into politics,
Good.
no,
'Cause,
I'm not. But there are correlations because CEOs of major organisations are often like the Prime Minister. They're often not there. They're not
No,
going to be there for
and
20 years.
Well,
most of
actually,
the
and
time.
you say that, and the the CIOs and the CTOs
Even
are
more
exactly, they're
transient.
even more transient. And the whole thing is, frankly, can be an absolute nightmare. Someone has an idea, they start it off, all sounds great at the time. 2 years into it, going a bit pants. Actually,
They just jump ship. From the outside in, this is something, and we'll get in trouble for this with some friends. I think it's
and
ridiculous.
now we're getting to the honesty, really, of where the money is getting spent. And that's the failure right there.
If you added on the recruitment costs to every time that, and I'm thinking of one person in particular, Rui, wherever you are in the world now, I won't say his full name. He's been headhunted from one job to another, so he's never actually had to. Actually deliver anything.
See anything through. Exactly.
And you're like, this is madness. You've got the recruitment costs. You've got to bring another person. So
I think
building a culture where you're, as a business, you're going somewhere together.
Absolutely, which is, again, going back to the fact that's why it can only really come from the leadership. You can't have that from any particular department because any department is a risk. It's a flight risk.
And I guess this is a pod that's broadly aimed in the marketing world, although it's already gone in every direction, which is great because the reality is that's where success comes from.
Yeah, it is.
One of the other challenges that we touched on before we started to press record is the idea that what can marketing functions do to help and to make it more likely. And one of the things you touched on was if it starts in the wrong place, it's doomed for failure anyway.
From the start.
So if you, dear listeners, if you're a marketing leader out there that's demanding you install Salesforce and Pardot, even though you've already got Marketo, which I have seen happen, or you're in a business where different businesses have merged and there's an M&A culture and you've ended up with tons of different automation platforms. The answer isn't for you guys to do it. What's the right thing for them to do in that point?
Yeah.
Go up,
exactly.
up.
It's got to go up, and it's got to go right. Exactly. And it's, what actual software are we using? What is our digital infrastructure? Let's just audit this. Let's just stop a minute and just
stop buying stuff.
Stop buying stuff. Stop making decisions on, whether
one person's view.
You prefer that user interface to something else. That's not what it's about. Let's just pause, go to the top, let's have a look at the, digital infrastructure. What are we trying to achieve here? Who are we trying to do it for? Is it for the customers? Yes, it should be. But where are the failings? It might be that actually customers are coming on board because the marketing team actually are doing a great job. Customers are coming on board, but they're not being serviced properly and therefore they're dropping off. So
how do you connect those pieces of data up so people aren't in silos?
But then so let's look at the delivery and team and why they're dropping off and why that's happening, and perhaps they need the technology actually to try and help that. So I'm sorry, marketing department, you're just going to have to stay with your several platforms for the moment, because actually over here that's where the problem is.
I've noticed that marketing is an area where it's targeted heavily for sales from the tech sector, obviously. So there's probably a higher volume of, I don't know this for sure, but I suspect there's more vendors broadly in the marketing space that are able to sell a marketing team of a big organization something than there is in the financial space. Maybe. I don't know.
I think you're probably just aware of it more because it's your
really?
industry.
It's that bad. There's just tons of stuff.
It's just tons of stuff everywhere.
The time.
It really is. To know, and again, that's
so it's
part
a bit of an emperor's new clothes thing going on.
And again, and that's sort of really what you want from the outsider coming in. You want that commercial ally really to say, look, actually, do you buy or do you build? Well, I went to this conference this week, and there are loads of small digital platforms, which are little plugins, which can just help with, very small areas of business, just automate them, which would make a massive difference to a lot of organisations and actually don't affect the infrastructure too much,
I think that's the key, isn't it? The stuff that can go on, there's fundamental business systems and a tech stack that runs that business.
Yeah.
There is a lot of control of not adding too much to that, understood?
Yeah.
Because you don't want people you don't want an agency like me going, do you know what you need? I'm going to spin up this tool because where does that fit? But one thing we are finding is a better conversation to have is, look, if this is a piece of work that we need to do, say it's a bit of customer acquisition work from a marketing team point of view, we don't need to bake that into all of your stuff. Let's take that off-site into our own environment. Let's run that as a test. If that delivers the goals, then let's change the way that your setup is.
Yeah.
So there's ways of trying things without transforming. It's just trying things.
It's just trying
You don't
things.
need to buy a new piece of, actually good agencies or good consultants or good partners will go, well, we'll buy it. We'll put it in place. We'll put the controls up, run it as a test. If it works, then you build it into what you're doing long term.
But again, it's about that, finding a great partner and just
it's easier said than done.
Well, yeah,
but we are here.
Yeah, just dropping, drop the ego, find a good partner, have those conversations. Things do go wrong.
Okay.
What we were saying earlier on. Again, back to 80. Oh, that was a stat that I didn't use before. 83% of manufacturing in the UK have struggled with digital adoption. £1.7 million per project. So,
Well, there's huge. That's a whole nother podcast.
Exactly.
The transformation of the manufacturing
things
sector.
go wrong, and it's just like you say, it's de-risking that, that mistake, making it small, saying why did it go wrong? Okay, learning from it, taking that back. Right, let's start again. Good, trial and error. Well, we know that now. Move on. There are lots of different areas to explore. But doing nothing, unfortunately, is just not an option. And that's really, the kind of key message at the moment.
Okay. So let's think about some practical top tips, because we've talked very broadly, probably in a rounder way than I thought we were going to, actually, which is good because I understood it, which is great.
Oh, good.
But there must be some top tips or some things that our listeners can take away to either think about this in a better way or to deliver in a better way. Have you got some things that you can share, like a hit list of what you'd get our guys to think about?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the one that we've been talking about really, which is, start from the top. It's got to come from good leadership. Do it today, and get that leadership team on board and consult the organisation first before you bring in any new technologies or decide actually, what the solution might be. Make sure that the organisation is on board with it. And that's then from the top down, know. I think another tip is, and I'm sort of putting them in order of the process that you'll do them in, I suppose. So start with that. And then, listen to your organisation, listen to the feedback that you're getting from them on, are the priorities that you thought were a priority? Is that what they're thinking at the coalface? Is that what they're hearing from the customers that they're dealing with?
Would you put, if you were working with someone, would you say, okay, let's put a rhythm into this project, catch-ups, reporting? Is there a typical... does it depend from project to project?
It depends from project to project,
But there should be some sort of playing back up.
Absolutely. I think
what's going on with that 80 billion we just
Yeah.
Don't leave it too long.
No, exactly. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I think really it's at this point it's really about those kind of normal research methods, and it's about almost like, what was that program that was on about the CEO that went round, the undercover
boss.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes me cry.
Yeah. It's really, because it needs to come from the top, it needs to be heard. People need to come down and listen to what, people are saying at the coalface and the problems that they're experiencing, and then say, okay, right, well, how can we change this? How can we make it better? And then again, it's the listening piece on, well, if someone who hasn't been sitting, around the C-suite for 20 years, but is 19, who's just come out of college and actually doesn't want to do this job, actually wanted to do something else. So he thinks probably completely differently to everyone else in the organisation, says, sorry, but just explain to me, why aren't we doing it like this? Because again, they're the nuggets of information that companies are charging, consultants are charging millions of pounds day rate for, to get.
And the answer might
and the
be
answer is
with
there.
the T-boy.
Yeah, exactly.
I've always felt that the T-boy is a good place to start when you need an answer.
Don't overlook the T-boy.
There's no such thing as a T-boy anymore, of course. Nowadays, not allowed to say that.
But yeah, so I think that's a really big one as well. Listening, and then again, it's about being honest with yourself with the budget. Again, and this goes back to the leadership team. How much have you got? And that isn't, we're not going to tell the agency, or we're not going to tell them how much we've got because, we don't want them to spend all our budget. Like, get real. Just get real. We're
Common
all grown
theme
ups.
on this pod
We're all grown
is
ups
people's
now.
fear of talking about money.
Yeah,
in
because
the UK especially.
Oh God, it's
nuts.
so boring. It really is boring, and I think probably that might be why people find me a bit abrasive sometimes, because I don't mind asking questions about money. But yeah. How much have you got?
Spend what you've got to spend.
It's fine.
Don't spend more.
It's
don't spend
fine.
less.
Yeah,
Spend
exactly.
it.
We're happy with that. Just tell us what it is, because it's not just about delivering a technology within that. It's about delivering a program, and that program, if that has to come out of that budget, then okay, let's make sure that we can, make something fit. Because what we can't do is spend 90% of that on, consultants and 10% on the technology and not worry about the people.
And then turn around to your internal team and say, why did that fail?
Yeah. What do you mean you can't use that? What do you mean you don't know how to use it? What's wrong with you? Or when it breaks, you've got no one around to fix it because you didn't, So it's a program. Give them a budget. Let's kind of work within that parameters and lay that out. And again, when we know what that is, we can communicate that with the audience before we start anything.
And I guess this is where our friendly listeners that are in the marketing world can actually make a difference. That communication piece internally.
I think so. I think
it's sometimes under. I find everyone wants the shiny external stuff, but where you can make a real difference to a business, this is one of those moments where you can be absolutely instrumental to the success of a business.
Getting buy-in, because not just you, there's other people around the table that do obviously work on data and analytics and forecasting. But, let's be honest, try and get people to understand the importance of that. And if it's not there, then, its efficiencies can't be made, you can't be competitive, all the same messages. Again, this is not new information. No. It's all the same. And even though AI has come along, it's the same thing. It solves the same thing, which is it makes you more efficient. It makes you more competitive. Okay. So whatever's going to come along, you have to get that into your culture. You have to start thinking that way. And I think, again, that is the piece that, absolutely, anyone within communications that is a senior leader can go in and try and get people around the table to understand that, and so that there is that, real kind of adoption within the organisation. And then that can filter down. And so the budget, and then I suppose another top tip would be, again, just total transparency when you start talking to partners. If you don't feel that they understand what you're saying, or you don't understand what they're saying, silence is acceptance. Don't just let them talk in gobbledygook business talk that you don't understand. Part of what...
There's a thing that happens in this where people ascend through the ranks. They're all the first time that they buy a McKinsey report.
Oh yeah.
It's the most exciting time of their life because they think they've made it.
Yeah.
Then they get the McKinsey report that costs, I don't know, 100 grand.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, I think I knew.
I think I knew that. I just used different words.
I just used different words.
Yeah.
But there is a role for the McKinsey. I get it. From a board level, I get what you're buying. but don't underestimate the knowledge and skills and talent that you've got around you in that decision-making process. And
Absolutely.
if your team are going, that guy's talking bollocks, listen to them. Just because they don't work to McKinsey doesn't mean they can't spot a bullshitter. And there's a lot of them out there in the world of software sales transformation work.
Yeah.
So I love the way you've been talking about that sort of leadership first, human approach, use your nose, all
use
of
your
these
nose.
things.
And if you haven't got someone that's, your aide, if you like, who isn't prepared to kind of follow it through to execution, then
Bring in a critical friend.
yeah.
I mean, this is really where you shine in these sorts of, and that isn't blowing smoke, but having someone that's able to, they're agnostic to what technology is brought in, or hire someone that's not linked in any way to vendors.
No, absolutely.
And their only reason is to make sure you don't drop the ball.
Yeah.
Make me look good in this project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I think, I don't have any allegiance to any, particularly, technical. I know a lot of people. Obviously, I work with, a lot of people, and I have technology companies in high regard, and yes, and there are some platforms out there that I think
but you don't make your
really
money
great.
selling software.
But I don't make my money selling software, and I just think I know the questions that need to be asked, and I know the kind of when the proposals come back, what's missing, and what the gaps that need to be filled in most instances, and how to read that and how to interpret it really. For people who don't necessarily, haven't been involved in digital for 20 years. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Everyone is using digital. Everyone is doing it. You probably know more than you know. But I think, people have just had the fear, sadly. They've lost confidence and they've...
Well, I'm not,
fear.
from what we've talked about today, and we're coming towards the end of our time, but the small amount of time we've had, we've been able to frame. No wonder they're scared when you look at the stats that you're talking about,
and they haven't moved.
But there is also lots of truth in the idea that stats paint one picture, but you can be the author of your own novel in this sense. You don't need to go down that line if you pull the right team together and take some of your tips.
Yeah.
So one of the things before we end I wanted to talk about is if I was a business, maybe a smaller organisation that's trying to deal with this. You mentioned there's some help that they can get, so there might be some grants and things.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can't stress this highly enough. There are grants and investment funds out there for all our organisations, all sizes. But I think particularly within the SME market at the moment, which is the market which they're the guys that are really playing catch up. They haven't been tapped into McKinsey for the last 20 years. So they need to catch up quickly. There are grants out there. Just make sure that you look into them. We can leave some perhaps with you and people can get in contact.
Yeah, we can get some details in the lists.
Investment grants, there's funds, there's also, some of them are regional, some of them are based on sectors. So, you do have to pick through it a bit.
That platform is changing a bit because of LEPs disappearing in the UK.
Yeah.
But my advice would be get in contact with Alex and she can point you in the right direction, or look at the show notes and we can have a look. But there is support out there.
Yeah.
So what I always like to do as well at the end of this is, we've heard your advice, but has someone told you something down the few years you've been working, only a few, of course, Alex, the few years that stands out as good advice that you could pass on to our listeners as a last moment? Don't say don't eat yellow snow, which you said earlier. That's my one.
Blackberries from the bottom.
Yeah. Never at dog height.
Yeah. That's a country girl coming out of me. Yeah, I think actually it's always stayed with me. To be honest, I think it's probably, I consider myself to be quite a good mentor throughout my years. And one of the reasons is because someone said to me once, don't piss anyone off on the way up because you never know who you're going to meet on the way down. And that's always stuck with me. So I've always been incredibly kind of protective and nice to anyone working with me or under me.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know. I think that is a brilliant advice. And Alex, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been
on
fun.
the pod.
Thank you.
We're going to put all of Alex's details in the show notes. So if you've got questions, you want to get a bit of information about what we've talked about today, you can check them out below. But all that is left is for me to say thanks for joining us on another Unedited podcast.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on another episode of Unedited. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. Find all of our updates on your favourite social media and podcast platforms. Just search for the Unedited Podcast.